Go for it.
Okay. I've got to like.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
That's why I do 100 claps.
Wait, I feel like it's a dance. All right. Welcome to the Friend of Sinners podcast. I am not the host, but I'm Josh. That's the host, Andrew.
Hey guys, what's up?
And we're going to be talking about humility versus low self-esteem. Oftentimes, I feel like they can get confused, and we're going to dive into what that actually looks like, and hopefully answer some questions you guys might be having, or answer questions you didn't even know that you had. So, Andrew, take it away.
All right, so I don't know. I feel like I think it was Nate that brought this up, where it's like the difference between humility versus low self-esteem, and I find that such an interesting topic because, for me particularly recently, did I finally realize that there was a distinct or sharp difference between the two, and one is godly and the other is not, but they both look the same, or they can look the same in certain aspects. So I was just wanting to quickly, just share a little bit about that. And yeah, one of the things that comes to my mind, what helped me get to that point, should not be touching that. Sorry, I got all these books this time we got C.S. Lewis here. All right, You guys are gonna like him. I think we might have quoted this a little while back.
Probably.
But like C.S., like I think I feel like I quoted, but I feel like this started a work in me to kind of realize a little bit about what humility is.
Okay.
Or what it's not, I should say. So, for those of you who are wondering, it's mere Christianity. Ignore the pink tabs. I don't like writing on my book. I just like to put tabs and stick it onto it. Yeah, so it just talks about, do not imagine that if you meet a really humble man, he will be what most people call humble nowadays. He will not be a sort of greasy, smarmy person who is always telling you that, of course, he is nobody. Probably all of you think about him is that, probably all you will think about him is that he seems a cheerful, intelligent chap. If you do dislike him, it will be because you feel a little envious of anyone who seems to enjoy life so easily. He will not be thinking about humility. He will not be thinking about himself at all. If anyone would like to acquire humility, I think, tell him the first step. The first step is to realize that one is proud. And the biggest step, too, at least, nothing whatever can be done before it. If you think you are not conceited, it means you are very conceited indeed. So just to look at a short thing, like a person who's humble is not announcing it.
Right.
And you often don't think that they're humble. You just think they're into you.
Right.
They're not about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the start of some groundwork for me to realize the difference in that. Because I think we talk a lot about it in the Bible. Josh, what is humility?
Humility. Is it by C.S. Lewis? I don't know. The quote that's, humility isn't thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less, which is one that stuck in my brain for a long time. And that was the deciding factor, because the thing about being self-absorbed is it can be with pride and it can be with self-deprecation. Like, both of them are absorbed with me, whether that's I need to make me look awesome because I am better than everyone else and everyone needs to just bask in my splendor, or man, I'm awful, and every time someone compliments you, you're like, oh no, I'm terrible. Like, you don't know me. I really do suck. And everything's
that was a little bit like me.
But both of them are still you focused. So oftentimes, like you're saying, I really like that what you read there of you're not going to notice the really humble guy until, like, it's probably afterwards, like thinking of the person and you're like, man, they're really humble. Like, they've never taken, every time, like, if I compliment them, they just appreciate it, and then we kind of move on, or whatever it is. I guess that's an image of what humility looks like, I think, to me. But they're not self-deprecating, because it's all about thinking about the other person, and they switch it, like, oh, thank you so much for that. You did great at this, and it's just a natural reverse instead of soaking it in or something like that. And I think I actually wrote down, this is, I don't know if I can go as bold of saying this as I did say it, but kind of thinking of others cures low self-esteem and pride, where if you can get the attention off of you, then you can't be prideful or just low on yourself, which both are sin, because one is uplifting yourself to a position higher than God has put you, and degrading yourself is trashing on God's work of art that he created intentionally.
Yeah. And I think, Spurgeon kind of goes a little bit onto that line, but like, let me just go back just a little bit. So we kind of talked a little bit about humility. It's thinking more about others. I always like to think in opposites, like in antonyms. Like think about like, what is the opposite meaning of that? If I don't really understand what humility is, the opposite would be prideful.
Right.
And I think we all kind of like know quickly what a prideful person looks like. I think we all like know a good handful of people in our lives who are like super proud, boastful,
and it's not fun to be around.
And it's never fun to be around those guys. And like it's always about them. It's always about what they desire, what they want. And like sometimes looking at the opposite of that helps me understand a little bit more about what humility should look like or what that should be. And I don't know. I've always liked to think of things in those kind of terms. I don't know if that helps anyone to just kind of understand a little bit between pride and humility. Is like one is about like attention should be on me, while the other one is my attention is on you. My focus is on you.
I think that's often a big mistake, though, when you're trying to counter pride, is I think that's why people often go to low self-esteem or degrading themselves in their brains, because they're like, well, I don't want to be prideful. I see that nobody wants to be around that guy, that every conversation is brought back to him somehow. So how do I not be that? Well, then you go to the opposite and you overcorrect, I guess. But I think what you said about instead of just don't be prideful, that's the goal. I think what you nailed it was the goal is just don't think of you as much. Like try to think out, look for others. What can I do for others? That kind of thing.
And I think Philippians tackles this. I remember just being taught one day how like, because I used to think, being humble, being humility, if you're trying to be humble and, under humility, you're this person who just thinks so little of themselves. And one of the things that kind of just blew my mind thinking about is Jesus was extremely humble. And there was no way he was little. There was no way he was a nobody. There was no way he was just some little...
He never talked bad about himself, never degraded himself at all. He was very upfront of, this is who I am. He knew exactly who he was. I am the Son of God. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. Everything. He was very set in knowing it. And I think that helps you be humble. Like if I know who I am, then I don't need to have others recognize who I am, because I know who it is. And I can't degrade myself because I know exactly who I am, and that solidifies me.
Yeah, there was something I was reading about. I've just been hitting Spurgeon so much about on this topic, but like I don't have the page, but like he talked about how like when we worship God and understand who he is and that we're made in that same image, it's hard to self-deprecate ourselves. It's hard to hate ourselves or have low self-esteem because we're made in his image and he loves us. And so like we have this inherent value that comes from God. So kind of along that same line. But I just want to read something that's kind of interesting that helped me again, like talking about how Jesus was humble. And this goes in Philippians 2. I'll start from reading from verse 1. And so it says, "Therefore, if there is any consolation in Christ, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any affection and mercy, fulfill my joy by being like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind let each other esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out not only for his own interest, but also for the interest of others." So it's just telling us how we can be humble. And then right after it goes, "Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant and coming in likeness of man. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross." I don't know, that just kind of hits me how, again, like we think about Jesus, he's not thinking of himself as a nobody, but he is literally the Son of God, and he's walked and lived as a babe. He hungered. He walked on this earth being reviled and mocked, and people were bitter at him and cursing him. And he's like, don't you know I didn't hear him respond. Don't you know who I am? I'm about to smite thee. I don't know. It's just like Christ is our example.
Right.
For being humble. So I don't know. I find that like a really cool, lesson or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that. So.
And Satan himself, like when we're tempted, it's mostly us, but there are demons that are around that do tempt people.
Mm-hmm.
I would say don't latch onto that. Like if you're tempted by something, don't just immediately be like, oh, Satan is tempting me. Well, probably not. There's one Satan. But anyways, so Satan, the master of all the demons, top guy himself, was trying to tempt Jesus, and he was trying to bring up pride in him. Like, you can do this. You can call the angels to come. I will put you in charge of everything you see on the earth and stuff. And he was trying to make Jesus fall the way that he did, because Satan was like the first sinner. Like, pre-Adam and Eve, like he was the one that he thought himself better than God, and he was like second in command, like the chief of all the angels, and he was the most beautiful angel and the like choir director or something like that.
Yeah.
And he's like, man, I am amazing. I could do so much better than God. And that brought him down to the downfall.
Yeah.
And so pride is like, I would say, the root of pretty much all sin, because when it's me focused, it takes your mind off of God. And then it's, what can I do to make me happy, make me not feel that, make me in charge, give me whatever it is. And then when it's me focused, it leads to all of the other sins, which is just interesting. That
and
pride.
when you talk about that, that just makes me think how, like, when they talk about the 7 deadly sins, how pride is the deadliest. Because I feel like all our sins come from or stems from that, because it's about me. It's about my ambition, my wants, my desires. How do I fulfill it, regardless of what the consequences or who it hurts or who it offends? So I think that's so interesting.
Well, even like the 7 deadly sins, I can't even name them all. But like, if you go with lust, envy, greed, just the ones I can think of off the top of my head. Gluttony. All those are pride. Yeah. Still, I want to make me feel better with eating as much food as I want because it tastes good. That's my pleasure.
Why are you calling me out? I
all
like
of
good
those
food,
things,
man. I like some good Oreos. Cookies are my one weakness.
I got more than one on food.
And pizza too. Yeah, sure.
But pick your favorite of the 7, and it goes back to that. So it's countercultural to be putting others first, because everything is focused on you. Like the stupid advertisements of everything, it's like goes back to, well, you deserve this, you deserve a vacation, you need a bigger fridge, you need whatever it is because you deserve it. And then everything is just showing you since birth now that everything should be about you, because why shouldn't it be about you? You're number one in life, and it's not what God has in mind for us.
And I feel like that kind of goes like when it talks about at the end times, people will be lovers of themselves. It's we just care about ourselves more than we care about others, and that's ultimately where sin comes from. Because if I don't care about you, I will lie to you.
Right.
I'll steal from you. I'll do you wrong, And so I feel like that plays such a big role into why we behave the way we do, or why we wrong each other or sin against each other. Talking about like humility and pride, I don't know if we really talk too much about low self-esteem. Why do you think, or what do you think would be the difference between humility or low self-esteem? Like,
I think it goes back to the quote I was saying. It's trying to degrade yourself to make you not prideful. You're trying to be the opposite of pride, and so instead of building yourself up, you're like, I'm going to tear myself down.
Yeah.
And I think in general, most people say things to themselves in their own head that they would never say to anyone else. At least I know that's true for me. And so but humility isn't thinking less of yourself. it's thinking of yourself less. So I'm just not going to consume my thoughts about me. So I would say that's the difference.
Yeah. No, I like that. I think that's honestly just a fair evaluation. Is like, we don't have to degrade ourselves in order to be humble, which for me is a really big like shift. I don't know. It just recently just made me rethink like, was I never humble at any point? Like I have I just realized I deprecate myself and I have like such this low self-esteem. I'm like, man, I don't know if I was humble at any point in my Christian walk. Like this is just kind of blowing my mind. And again, as I'm reading Spurgeon, I think this is what kind of led me to talk about this, is like, it just kind of opened up this sharp, distinct difference between that low self-esteem and humility, because I feel like on the outside, it looks the same. Like if you look at a person and he gives, the homeless person like $1,000, it looks like he just did a good charity work and he was being humble, but he could have done it for any multitude of reasons within his heart. Whether he just wants to, you see those YouTubers who give $1,000 to poor people or homeless people. Are they really doing it out of charity, or are they just doing it for the clicks and views,
Right. Or is it to just make yourself feel better because you did something stupid earlier and you're like, man, I got to do something good now to counteract that bad thing I did earlier.
Yeah. And so this is where I think like low self-esteem and humility can both look the same on the outside, but I think it's a matter of the heart, and that definitely hit me pretty hard. So yeah, I've just been reading this book, and it's just quotes and stuff from Charles Spurgeon. If you guys aren't familiar, I don't even remember when he lived. I think it's like over 100 years ago or 150. Anyways, great preacher. So low self-esteem is a feeling of worthlessness about oneself. Sometimes the feeling is conscious, and at other times it is very unconscious. Excessive drinking or pill taking, high levels of generalized anger, self-pity, excessive shyness, loudness at parties, depression, a martyr-like attitude, and even many physical symptoms may, in essence, stem from low self-image. And I love how it says, like, it's not always conscious. A lot of times we don't think about why we behave the way we do. And like I said, this is just kind of hitting me.
Right.
So I don't even know what's going to happen. I might even talk about this again later and be like, yo, there's so much more I'm learning.
Right.
For me, this is like just a new step in that journey. And I think there's like another little quote just a little bit further down. It cannot be emphasized enough that frequently a low self-image and a good self-image are confused with biblical concepts of humility and pride. Humility is not groveling. It does not imply hating oneself or putting oneself down. True humility could best be defined as an absence of occupation with oneself, because people who truly like themselves do not have to keep evaluating their worth. They forget themselves in their tasks or in other people. So it's just kind of like, as you said, you're not thinking less about yourself. You're just not thinking about yourself as much. You're just thinking of other people. So I find that really, really helpful. Like I said, this is just blowing the cap off, and like, I'm like, whoa, this is like, I don't know, some new thing I'm just learning now.
I think it's perfect that you're saying that. Just this, just to show that we don't know what we're talking about most of the time. For like, we don't have it all together for those listening.
Yeah. Oh no,
this is just as teaching to us as we're learning this as well. But fun fact,
go for it.
Teaching, since we're teaching, did you know the words humble and humility come up 80 times in the Bible? Apparently. Okay. Which I guess I was expecting a little more, honestly. But apparently it's like about 60 times in the Old Testament and like 20 in the New.
Oh, really?
So I just thought that was a fun fact. So with that, I've had this conversation about, like, we need to be thinking about others more and just focus on others and you'll be fine and stuff like that. And someone countered me with, yeah, but you need to... If you're always focused on others, then your needs won't be met, and it's not healthy for you. So you need to do things for you too. What would you say to that?
Man, that's a hard one. And as far as like what I'm reading over there, there is this balance, because we can. I think the quote was like, you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. People like people who often just cared so much about others are just completely miserable, and they're running on E. You need to be filled so that you can fill others. So I think there needs to be this balance of, yes, take care of some of the things you need, but at the same time, if all you care about is your problems and the things you're thinking about, then you're missing out. You're not taking care of what Christ has called us to take care of. Like, as I was reading Philippians, like, keep others in mind. Do nothing according to your own needs, but according to what other people need. So, go for it. You good?
Looking up the verse that I'm thinking of.
Go for it.
There it is. Okay, it's like a very common. Probably a lot of people know this. It's the he said to them, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind." So that's everything's on God, not on you, on God. That's priority number one. Then goes to, this is the greatest and the most important command. That's number one. Second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and prophets depend on these two commands. That's Matthew 22:37-40. But the part I wanted to highlight was love your neighbor as yourself. So that doesn't say just love your neighbor, ignore yourself. It's
that's good.
very particular. As you're loving them as you love yourself. So if you can't be okay with you, love you and the person that God has created you to be, because he created you intentionally on purpose for a purpose. And I think that kind of goes back to Jesus with his confidence in knowing exactly who he was. He knew exactly who he was in Christ and his purpose. And that gave him the ability to, I think you mentioned one of those, you don't have to keep reflecting and thinking of, how do I get others to look at me? What am I doing? Do I need people to look at me to know who I am? But so when you have that concreteness, that foundation, then you can love how God created you. That doesn't mean, I don't want to overstep and go to, that doesn't mean just be okay with where you're at and, well, God loves me as me, but you're just a slob and a sloth that's just stuck where you're at. Like, continue your pursuit in God and growing in your faith. But be okay where you're at. And as you love yourself in the way that God has created you to be, flaws and all, that's how you can love others as well with that mindset. So don't neglect yourself, as you're saying, but have a healthy balance.
Yes. And I think that's important. And it's always hard because I feel like we always swing to one way or the other. Like we often think if we hate ourselves, then God will love us more because, like there's a self-flagellation mindset that we have to punish ourselves. We have to hate ourselves in order to.
What's flagellation mean?
If I'm pronouncing it right, it's like when you hurt, like when people back then, especially I think this was most common in the Catholic practice, like if they sinned or did something wrong, they would whip their backs and hit themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And punish themselves, essentially. Right. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. I've only read it.
I have no idea.
Yeah, anyways. So we talk about okay, great, it's nice to know how to be humble and all that, but why should we be humble?
Good question.
And so one of the things that comes to my mind, and I particularly love this verse, especially lately, I've just been reading around here, is 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 5. Likewise, you younger people, submit yourselves to your elders. Yes, all of you, be submissive to one another and be clothed with humility. And it quotes a verse, for God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time. It's just when we humble ourselves, it's ultimately saying we put ourselves under God's control. We're not taking things into our own hands. We're saying, God, I trust you. It's all in your hands. Do with this as you will. And one of the best examples that I was just teaching some kids this about this passage in verse grace, God giving grace to the humble, is King David. And we don't often think of him as the most humble, but
he's got flaws.
Yeah, he's got some flaws. But one of the most interesting things was, if you guys aren't familiar, when Saul is pursuing David, he's hiding in this cave one day. And Saul is in this cave, and he's looking for David, and he, for some reason, doesn't see him, but David is right next to him, and his servant's
because he went into the cave to use the bathroom.
Yes, we're going to keep this PG. And so David had this opportunity to just kill Saul, kill his enemy, and that's it. He doesn't have to worry about his problems anymore.
And all his guys were telling him to.
And everyone else was telling him to. Instead, he cut off this robe, and even he felt guilty to cut even this part of his cloak. And as Saul gets out, he goes, hey, Saul, by the way, I had the chance to kill you. Look,
Mm-hmm.
here's a piece of your cloak. I had the chance to cut you down. And it was just one of those things where, like, I feel like David trusted God so much that even though he could have taken things into his own hand, and that could have solved all of David's problems for a good amount of years, because Saul kept chasing him after that. But he entrusted into God, and I feel like that was something that like helped me. Like I love stories, and just when I see something visual or read a story like that, that just helps me to realize I don't have to do things my way. God is gonna, as Peter says, He's gonna exalt us in due time.
Right. And he brought him. I guess. I don't know if would be considered the going to low. I don't think it was low self-esteem with David, but I don't know if it was that part or a different time when pretty much a very similar thing happened, where he was like, Saul, why are you coming after me? He's like, why is it that a king would be coming after a flea or after a dog? Like, I have nothing on you. I am not trying to take your throne. I am not trying to do this. This is your kingdom. Like, do whatever you want. You are God's anointed right now, and stop worrying about me. But Saul just had this
jealousy,
this such a loathing for David, because he had a pride in him that nobody's going to take my throne. And that's what he had in his head. And so the real pride thing that first started, I think, that I could see was when David was Saul's head general or something of his armies. And he went out and was killing everybody and doing everything that Saul was telling him to do, and was doing amazing at it. And so he's coming back into town, and all the women in the streets were singing, Saul kills the thousands and David kills the tens of thousands. Yes. And Saul's like, wait, what?
Yeah, and that's where he gets a little jealous.
Yeah.
Because that hits our pride. Someone, we're a king, we should be the top, and someone's outdoing me?
Right. He's like, and David's like, you told me to do it. Like, what do you want me to do? You want me to fail? Why are you telling me to do this?
Yeah. No, I think a lot of this is just cool, and I love these kinds of stories, and I certainly hope this kind of helps. Like, this is helping me understand a little bit about humility and low self-esteem, and I'll probably talk more about that later, and kind of a little bit into like the whole self-hating, self-loathing, and deprecation. But I think this is just a good. I don't know. I feel like this again for me, like just this door opened wide open. I'm like, there's this whole new way of looking at it, and I think it's gonna be much healthier for me and for others that we act in actual humility and not in this low self-esteem.
Yeah, just real quick, because we're kind of wrapping up.
Yeah.
I wanna alter something I said initially. Near the beginning, I said I was kind of vague about it, unsure, but I said it anyways about that. I thought the cure to low self-esteem and pride is thinking of others. I want to kind of change that, and if I'm wrong on both or one of the others, tell me in the comments nicely.
Nice.
But I'd say it's looking to God first, as that was the greatest of all commandments. Love God with everything you got. And then looking to Jesus, as he was very knowing who God says he was. And by knowing who you are, you don't need to think of you, or if you do, it is in humility, because of knowing who I am, what God did for me, and because of that, how could I not love others the way that God loved me? I'm gonna go with that.
I feel like that's pretty good reasoning. Yeah, like I said, I'm more learning this with you guys, so like who knows what's gonna happen next week. I'm like, we're going different direction, but I love this, and I find this like just so shifting. I don't know. I want to challenge you guys. Like, what do you guys think, and how do you feel about this? Because I don't know. Like, I've been in church and I've known about pride and humility for so long, but it's like
it's different when you look into it yourself.
I know. Like when it hits us, like, do we really know it? So, anyways, I find that interesting. Thank you guys for listening to us. I feel like this has been a pretty good episode, and yeah, let me just humbly say this is the best channel in the world. You guys should totally like, share, and subscribe.
Share it to your most prideful friend.
Share it to your most prideful friend. All right. Yeah, this is not going to be offensive at all. So you guys
should totally listen to this.
Exactly. So you guys should take care. Have yourself a wonderful day.